precipitation late in March or April, that we're going to get the lake full enough to submerge the upper row of shutters, which only shortens the period of time that we have actions that we can actually delay this particular event of the site gate operation. So we're looking at ways to kind of elongate the sense of how we go through the operation so that we can prolong that last bit of cold water pool. And that's probably the next tier of the work that we're going to do. Now that we've kind of defined that the model is probably very useful in predicting the circumstances up to that point. So what can we tweak within that to see if, do we modify the target? Do we delay the start of temperature operations in the spring? All in an attempt that those are not optimal conditions, obviously. We're not targeting 100% of the returning salmon. We're not providing optimal temperatures throughout the season, but incrementally that may push off this one concern where we have a higher degree of uncertainty, and in the long run have a better survival of the overall year class. So these are some things that we're working on with NOAA Fisheries and Fish and Wildlife Service, State Fish and Wildlife, within the Sac River Temperature Task Group. The second deliverable from the February order included a March temperature plan based on conditions then for Shasta and Sac River, and we're working closely with the fish agencies collectively on basically several versions of that plan. One of them being Reclamation's first cut on how to weave releases and temperature management in that part of the system with the bigger dynamics that we're dealing with, delta salinity, water supplies, and then see how we might morph that in some ways to actually try to improve the outcome as it relates to mortality for winter run, but then also determine what the potential trade-offs are with that from other elements of the system. As we work through this, the dynamics of flows out of Folsom, for example, and potentially out of Warrville are also somewhat of a challenge because conditions aren't particularly great there either. So we could make some adjustments as it relates to Trinity Shasta, but then put another element of reliance on those two reservoirs that then break those particular systems. So we need to be kind of cautious of that. But that's where we are in our planning process. And as we formulate our requests for delta modifications of standards, a large part of it is how does that give us some flexibility in this broader sense on these very challenging reservoir operations this summer.
Good. One question I have is looking at this year and looking at the Trinity levels, is that adding to your set of challenges that that's not necessarily as available as you might have assumed last summer, and going into this summer, is that one of those dials that you have less control over to meet this temperature challenge?
The answer to that is yes, we're seeing less storage there, but as John's chart indicated, it's probably closer to last year, and probably as we get to the April timeframe, probably not that far off. I think what we're going to be looking closely at is the actual stratification of the lake that we've already seen. Our latest soundings of both Trinity and Shasta indicate that, unfortunately, we're probably a little warmer than we were at this stage last year, which just gives us a little bit less of a resource to actually work with. So we're giving some real thought as to what is a realistic sense of water we can take from the Trinity system and still be able to manage flows and temperatures up on that part of the river.
I think also we're in the spirit of anticipating emergencies this year as opposed to learning from them last year, which I think in your thorough presentation you've addressed a lot of our questions. But when we look at the Trinity system, we know it's connected to the issues related to the Klamath River, and that became an emergency set of decisions last year. So I'm just curious how you're planning that into this summer's operation and making it less of an emergency decision and more of a planned decision.
Well, it is difficult because obviously what we saw last year was a substantial amount of water from the Trinity, and to some degree water released on the Klamath system was, given the struggles on that particular project, were also not trivial. This will set up to some degree in terms of what the returning salmon projections are. One of the concerns is crowding. Obviously, the temperatures in that particular, when those returns occur, and then just the presence potentially of disease and just water quality overall. The water quality last late summer on the Lower Klamath was particularly difficult. A lot of algae and other organics in the water that some fear is a real contributing factor to the stressors of the fish and temperatures as well. So we think we've got a plan to deal with it. For lack of, we're not necessarily earmarking and say, yes, we will have these particular flows at that time, because we're reserving the question to see if we see a developing problem. But given the hydrology that we're looking at, both in Southern Oregon as well as Northern California, it does appear that we need to be prepared to act upon a situation that should present itself. But I think one of the key components will be the projected return of salmon this year on the system. And I haven't heard of any particular numbers yet, and they're probably very preliminary if we do have some.
Yeah, well, it's early, but I appreciate you acknowledging that as part of the overall planning looking forward.
Definitely.
Thank you.
I know we have a very hefty agenda, but just a couple other questions, if you don't mind. One is, I know I'm not talking State Water Project here, I'm talking more DWR here. Do you all, and I should know this, I'm sorry I don't, do you all have any way in which you keep records of storage levels of non-project reservoirs? This is also a question that we get. It's relevant in part to the conservation issue that we're going to take up later on, because obviously every area has a different mix of water sources and storage, whether below ground or above ground. But so, for example, do you get reports on where Diamond Valley is, for example, or the other smaller scale reservoirs along the state? If you look at, for example, if you look at the Australian, I have an app that shows me the storage levels of all the major storages. They have a simpler system than we do, to be sure. But do you have that data anywhere? So that people could see, the media or others could see where that lies?
Yes, the department on CDEC has, you have access to probably every major reservoir in the state. I think it's just a matter of what size, at some point the smaller reservoirs, say by the utility companies, whatnot, probably there's at some limit where we don't have the smaller type reservoirs, but for the most part we should have all major reservoirs accessible.
Right. And can you just say a little bit about your thinking? I'm sorry, did you want to do a follow-up?
Just what do you consider major, or what's the size roughly?
Well, I know that we have reservoirs, say the 50,000 acre foot, so maybe somewhere around there possibly is cut off.
And you talked about this on the bottom of the chart a little bit. What's your thinking about barriers, which is probably the biggest question? Last year you were able to dodge it through the analysis you were doing. When do you think you're going to have your thoughts on that this year?
Well, yeah, within the next month, I think is going to be critical. And as I said, sort of the analysis for that is much more complex than just the standards that we've asked for already. I imagine as soon as we get this one out the door, we're going to start the process on that. And absent any precip event like we saw early February, in the next month, that will probably be following through on that request, or at least that strongly consider it, I should say, moving forward on that.
And that's the 3 barriers that you presented last year, more or less.
More or less that is, so, what this, being able to pull back on that from last year, there has been an opportunity over the last year to work with the stakeholders and those folks that would be affected by this. And so, a more programmatic approach that process is in place. It's not completed, but at least it has set a lot of foundational work for what could possibly be an emergency installation this year as far as a project. So there's a lot of good work that's been done in that area.
Could you talk a little bit about the permit process and any ability you have for expedited review?
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to talk through the permitting process on that. I would have to defer to our Bay Delta office, who's been doing all the work in that regard. So I don't want to step in and give false information here. So I would defer to the Bay Delta office of DWR.
We actually have, there's some environmental documents, and an application's been developed for putting in barriers 3 times over the next 10 years in the event that they're needed. So that's something that we have already been working with the department and reviewing in the event that they would be needed. And we're tracking the same things that Mr. Lehi has been referring to, and agree that absent one more good storm, it's something that we're going to have to be more active in processing and getting approved. Again, in conjunction with the combined drought operations.
I guess in keeping with the question or the comments that Chair Marcus made about other reservoirs, it does appear that as we make decisions about water in the state of California, we're increasingly going to have to take into account not just the state projects, as John Rubin was saying, but other sources of water. Groundwater now is potentially covered, but loosely at this point. Are you just focusing in on what the levers that you have, or are you both looking at other resources in the various regions that people can have access to?
Yes, I mean, the department as a whole is certainly looking at other drought-related non-state water project. Certainly, my particular role is managing the supplies for the state water project. So, my role is more narrow scope within the department. But yes, of course, Bill Croyle and his folks are looking at more holistically at the state in general.
And if I might add, we certainly are looking at it in terms of the San Joaquin, because that's germane to what's going to be one of the more difficult requests, and different from last year, is the San Joaquin River flow element, and also as that relates to really the overall operations of the system, the New Melones. We can expect little or no flow from the upstream in the San Joaquin, which will do a number of things. It means there will generally be no water coming in the San Joaquin River upstream of the Stanislaus confluence, which means water quality will generally be good, although I think the Bureau, and Mr. Milliken can correct me if I'm wrong, they're also contemplating that they might want to also ask for some adjustment of Vernalis salinity standards, just in the event that there's still salt coming in from upstream. So though that might make meeting salinity standards easier, it means the only real water in the San Joaquin is going to be from New Melones. And it also means, in tying it to some of the conversation that's occurred, it's not just about what should happen now in the spring in terms of any flows, but what kind of a trajectory do we need to get put on in terms of sufficient storage in the fall to maintain temperature control and things of that nature. And I'd say that's an overarching comment also with Shasta. If we observe that we didn't have success last year, it's something that we've been discussing and contemplating, well, what could we do different given everything that has been identified now, if it means not having as much early releases so that we don't cut it so close in terms of that temperature control. So that's something that we're certainly going to be looking at in terms of the proposal that would be coming into us, and that it constitutes a reasonable mix and balances, again, has been the word of the day in the moment. How do we do that for everything that we need to be considering for water supply and temperature control?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I got that from Mr. Milligan's presentation, that working with the fish agencies, we're looking at how do we maybe shift, that management of temperature in terms of the flows. Obviously, there are spring flows needed, but balancing that against, the goals of keeping the winter run viable. So we'll look forward to the details of that. I think this is important, a shift. We have to learn from what we did last year, and I appreciate the thoroughness that you're looking at, all the aspects of the different points of control that you have.
Yeah, we're rapidly approaching or have approached the point at which no options are good, unfortunately. It's a pretty dismal picture. So then I'm going to turn to public comment. We have one card, and that's Deirdre Desjardins from the California Water Research Group. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I wanted to give the board, this was in the thing I sent it, but there's a wonderful graph of storage in the major reservoirs, which I encourage you to look at. It's in the packet I submitted. But I think in spite of the bleak picture, we don't have a crisis in water supply this year. What we have is a crisis in demand. Neither urban demand nor agricultural demand has been reduced with the drought, and it's causing a crisis with groundwater depletion in the San Joaquin Valley, private wells going dry, and it's causing a crisis with reservoirs being drawn down. The State Water Project this year has already pumped 917,000 acre feet. That's 278% of what the State Water Project customers said they needed for health and safety reasons. The CVP has already pumped 421,000 acre feet. That's 234% of what they said they needed for health and safety reasons. We've already got the water we need for health and safety. The problem is people are still watering their lawns, people are still watering their golf courses, people are still planting loads of alfalfa, and we're depleting the reservoirs to do it. So I'll have more comments in the urban water conservation part. Thank you.
On those points, and certainly questions in my mind in this presentation was, okay, we were talking about supply management, but I also want to acknowledge Mr. Lehigh's point about making partnerships, thinking creatively about, for instance, the challenge of drought barriers to control salinity in the Delta. Another area I thought last year that was beneficial and positive were the partnerships in the North Valley that were made with the water users to manage the timing of their diversions. That was, I thought, innovative, and it was a good step, but of course we didn't meet certain metrics that we desired to meet. Certain goals were not met, and this is a matter of demand management. I'll say it for the state of California. 2015, we have to look at demand management in a partnership mode, ways we can move water, still get beneficial uses accomplished, but protect our natural heritage. That's what balancing is about. It does involve demand management, but that has to be done in partnership. So I just encourage the projects to reach out and think creatively about how that can happen. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for joining us and for all your hard work and all the work we're going to be doing together through this challenging time. So, thanks. Till next time. Good, thank you. Item number 6, just so you know, do we need to take a short break? People want to keep going? All right, we will take a lunch break today. We have a very heavy agenda. I'm going to try and get through the next 2 items before that break, just for people's planning. If you need to take a brio break or caffeine break or something, I suggest you just run out quickly at the moment. So item number 6, changing of the guard.
Darren's got his St. Patrick's Day tie going.
I didn't even plan this. Huh. Lucky me.
Right.
Morning.
So, good morning, Chair Marcus and members of the board. My name is Megan Tosney, and I'm with the Division of Financial Assistance. The proposed resolution before you today would provide conditional funding approval for the High Desert Water District's wastewater treatment and water reclamation facility. The district provides water service to the town of Yucca Valley. In May 2011, due to high nitrate concentrations in groundwater, the Colorado River Basin Regional Water Quality Control Board approved a resolution amending the basin plan to prohibit septic tank discharges in the town. The district is implementing a sewer project in 3 phases. The current funding request will construct phase 1, which will serve approximately 12,500 people. Phase 1 includes 2 separate Clean Water State Revolving Fund, or CWSRF, projects. The first project is the Publicly Owned Treatment Works Project, or POTW project, which will construct a sewer collection system in the central portion of town, a wastewater treatment facility, and recharge ponds. The second project is the Expanded Use Project, which will decommission individual septic systems on private property and install private laterals. The item before us today would provide conditional approval of approximately $142 million for the POTW project only. The Expanded Use Project is estimated to cost approximately $19.5 million and will be considered at a later date. This item is before the board for 2 reasons. First, the district has not yet approved the assessments and monthly wastewater user charges that will be pledged to the CWSRF financing. The district has requested conditional approval prior to completing those processes. Division execution of the CWSRF financing agreement would be contingent upon approval of the assessments and the wastewater user charges and pledge of the same to the CWSRF agreement. The proposed resolution also includes a sunset date. The financing agreement must be executed by September 30th, 2015, unless the district approves an extension of up to 120 days for good cause. Oh, sorry. Did I say? Okay. The second issue is the district's request for a reduced interest rate. The division weighs these requests carefully, taking into consideration many factors, including the community's disadvantaged status and the cost to the local residents, the availability of grant funds, previous cases where the board approved a reduced interest rate, as well as the loss of interest to the CWSRF program, which can impact the long-term revolving nature of the fund. The division is recommending a reduced 1% interest rate for the POTW project, which when compared to the current standard rate of 1.6% would save the district approximately $14.9 million in interest over 30 years and bring estimated monthly costs to $104 per single family residence and $65 per mobile home. The district is requesting a lower 0% interest rate, which when compared to 1% would reduce estimated monthly costs by approximately $8 per single family home and $5 per mobile home. Approval of a 0% interest rate would also result in a loss of interest to the CWSR program of approximately $38 million. We received 1 comment letter on this item. Ms. Donna Russell expressed concern about a potential lack of public awareness regarding the project. Additional letters have been submitted on behalf of the district from Senator Jean Fuller, Congressman Paul Cook, Coachella Valley Water District, Mojave Water Agency, and Community Water Center. Most of these letters express concern over the district's eligibility for Proposition 1 grants, so I wanted to provide additional clarification. Proposition 1 grant funds for small disadvantaged community wastewater projects are anticipated to be available starting July of 2015. Based on the draft funding criteria, which are currently available for public review and comment, the district would be approved for $8 million in grant funds for their expanded use project, which would be the maximum available per community. The grant amount for the expanded use project will be finalized when that item comes before the board, likely later this year. Grant funds provided for the expanded use project would directly benefit residents in Phase 1, reducing monthly costs by as much as $10 per household. Finally, I wanted to note a correction to whereas statement number 23, which indicates the current CWSRF interest rate is 1.5%. However, as of last week, the current rate is 1.6%. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to respond to any questions.
Questions before we have a substantial amount of public comment, most of it organized in a presentation. This paperclip means you're organized together, I'm assuming. Is that? Thank you for organizing yourselves. So then you know the order, but I'll tell you the order in order. And let me just figure. So you have a PowerPoint for 10 to 12 minutes. Assist with, that's the same PowerPoint. Okay, so that's 2 people. And then everybody else for between 1, 2, and 3 minutes. Okay. Let's go ahead with the PowerPoint. So that would be Mark Bann and Jennifer Poland. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. As our PowerPoint loads, I'd like to take a second to introduce some of our public officials and also some of my colleagues that are with us here today. We have Curtis Yakimal. He is the town manager for the town of Yucca Valley. George Huntington, the town of Yucca Valley's mayor. We have Roger Mays, director for High Desert Water District. Bob Statham, our president of the board for High Desert Water District. We have Wanda Statham, president, CEO of the Chamber of Commerce for Yucca Valley. And we also have Director Saran Graham in presence with us for High Desert Water District as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for your time this morning, allowing us to present this PowerPoint to you. You know, we've already discussed this morning the challenge that our community is up against with the prohibition. You know, within phase, or across the 3 phases, across the 3 boundaries rather, that make up the prohibition area, there's only over 8,500 developed parcels, or over 8,500 dwelling units basically, which is 20,000 residents that'll be impacted by it. As the prohibition states, there are compliance deadlines, or when the prohibition becomes enacted, the earliest of that being May 19th of 2016 for phase 1. It's coming up on us very quickly. It's hanging over our heads basically, so we have a little over a year to gain compliance, work with the regional board along with that. You know, I wanted to add our mission statement to this presentation because it's very important to how the district handles business with its community. If I could just read this real quick. Our mission is to provide a safe, reliable water supply and wastewater reclamation system for the customers of the High Desert Water District in an efficient and financially responsible manner. So it's always our challenge to provide a safe and reliable water supply. But the big thing that the district deals with in its day-to-day operations is providing that water supply in a financially responsible manner. And now providing wastewater services, we have to take that into consideration that much more as well. You know, our community is very disadvantaged, some of those areas more so than others. It really becomes, you know, an effort on our part to try to, you know, find available financing and find available methods to actually give to our community, to give them the infrastructure that they need on the water side and now on the wastewater side as well. You know, we're asking our community to approve an assessment to pass this so that we can construct this project. And, you know, our promise to our community throughout that entire time was that we were going to deliver this project at the lowest cost possible. So that means trying to achieve as many grants as we possibly can. That means getting as low as interest financing as we possibly can on the loans that we receive. That means just what it says, that's providing the project at the lowest possible cost. And that was our promise to our community, which is why we're here before you today. As we've discussed, the solution to this is a centralized wastewater collection and treatment system that the district calls its wastewater reclamation project. The total project costs are over $150 million. So we're starting from fresh, right? So our primary means of septic discharge, or wastewater discharge right now is through septic systems. So we're completely providing brand new wastewater facilities to this community. That's over 400,000 lineal feet of collection system pipeline within our phase 1 area alone. 3 pump stations, and then of course the wastewater reclamation facility. That, as we heard earlier, also addresses problems that we have, or issues that we have with the drought. Our community is extremely reliant on state water project water. This treated effluent will be discharged on site into reclamation ponds and eventually withdrawn to provide future groundwater, reducing our reliance on the state water project by over 1/3. And then just as a quick pointer, you know, this area is about the size of the city of San Francisco that we're providing these services to. You know, it's a very unique community in that if you were to visit us as you travel down our main thoroughfare down State Highway 62, you see quite a few amenities that are along the commercial corridor basically there. And it's interestingly enough because while you would think those amenities are a benefit to the community, they really serve a lot larger of a purpose. We have over 8,500 Marines out on the Marine Corps combat base in 29 Palms, California, that all come to Yucca Valley to shop, that all come to Yucca Valley to get dinner, to take their families out, things of that nature. We have over almost 3 million visitors to the Joshua Tree National Park every year that come through. Basically, the gateway to the national park is what Yucca Valley is referred to. In addition to this, over 800,000 people attend off-road events that are up in Landers, California, in addition. So well over 3 million visitors that this commercial corridor supplies some benefit to. So what I'm getting at is, you know, this project has much more of a broader scope than just providing a wastewater system to our community, but it's also a regional benefit, also being outlined within the Mojave Region's Integrated Regional Water Management Plan as a priority project as well. So just to go over those benefits we had discussed, you know, this is the only viable solution to allow our community to comply with this prohibition. Of course, having to provide this at the lowest cost possible, the district's done its due diligence to make sure that we are providing the lowest cost project that there possibly could be. So a centralized wastewater facility is the only way that we can provide that to our citizens. It protects our water supply from further nitrate contamination. As I mentioned earlier, it reduces our reliance on the state water project. It aligns with the Mojave Integrated Regional Water Management Plan. We're currently undergoing our salt and nutrient management plan as well within the Mojave region. This treatment plan has been modeled in with that, and it's just showing successful results towards nutrient management in the area as well. And then it, of course, supports the growth and prosperity of our disadvantaged community. Not just those visitors that come through, but all of the outlying areas within the town that are going to be impacted by this. So you really see the regional benefit, and discarding the regional benefit of this, we have to look at who's going to pay for this project. Over 59% of our residents are under $35,000 median household income. If you look at 30% of those residents are under $15,000 median household income. I mean, that's a substantially low amount of income for a family, considering that most of our dwelling units contain about 2.19 persons per household. So if you can imagine that living on $15,000, 30% of our service area makes that much per month. You can see some of the households that are within our community. Down in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see a mobile home that's part of a Burnt Mountain Mobile Home Trailer Park in our community. You know, something like that would sell for, you know, anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000 in our community, and the house above it, you know, anywhere from, you know, $70,000 to $120,000 as well. So Over 38% of our population is retired and on a fixed income, meaning that they get the same check every single month, and that most of their needs are met with that paycheck, most of their human health needs, all of their food, their mortgage, their rent, however they have to pay for, whatever they have to pay for out of the month has to come out of those dollars. And in most cases, those dollars are all spoken for at the end of the month. So even a small impact to that paycheck is a huge impact to the residents of our community. You know, and in talking with these residents, you know, our community understands the need of this project. It doesn't argue the fact that we have groundwater contamination that is occurring, that we're polluting our groundwater. It wants to protect that. This isn't the first time that we face water supply issues like this, but it requires the means to be able to afford that. This is what we hear all the time. Our current payments for our residents exceed 1.5% of the median household income. So that affordability rate that the state takes into consideration to determine whether or not a community can afford that or a household can afford that is exceeded by the assessment that will be placed on these property owners. Interest rates, of course, why we're here before you today. As we were talking earlier, the grant availability, the principal forgiveness that the district or our community doesn't have available to us at the moment. The fact that it will be until July before Prop 1 grants are available to this project. We need to move forward. We need to continue on. You know, we've been telling our community that we're going to go out to vote for this assessment for some time now. They're ready to pass this thing. Their biggest problem is that, you know, they want to get it at the lowest possible cost that they possibly can. And that's why the district is recommending for their 30-year loan for a 0% interest rate for 20 years and not to exceed a 1% interest rate over 10 years. So if we look at some of the total project costs for single-family residents, this is under a 1% scenario. The infrastructure cost is over $18,000. Those annual costs to that property owner, again, 59% of them making less than $35,000 a year, $704 annually. It doesn't just include the private property cost that we're financing with a state revolving fund loan. It also includes the the infrastructure cost, but it also includes the private property connections. The minimum cost for that's at $2,000 per property. So we're looking at $111 a month for that. And then 30-year maintenance, or over 30 years, the maintenance fees per year are $432. So the total cost of the project per resident is over $1,200 per year. You look at a mobile home residence, the same scenario. Their infrastructure costs are over $10,000. When you add the private property costs, the 30-year maintenance, or the annual maintenance fees, and the total cost basically becomes $773 per year. So that person, where most of them are living under that $15,000 per year. So it really becomes, especially for people like this, you know, almost an environmental justice kind of case. You know, these people deserve this service as part of their community, to have actual good drinking water and wastewater services. However, you know, most of them can't afford it. This is just a look over exactly what the impact is to the single-family residential, making under $1,500 or $15,000 median household income. You can see that's the combined costs that we just went over. That's 8% of their annual income, or of their total income, rather. For a mobile home park owner, it's 5% of their total income at $15,000. For single-family residential, moving up to the $35,000 MHI, you've got 3% of their annual income. The combined cost of 3% of their annual income, rather. And for a mobile home park, 2%. So basically, when we look at the savings that this recommendation would take the district, is basically over almost $24 million to our community. We've already got a $150 million project. You have the ability not to make it a $175 million project to our community by approving the 0% interest rate option that we're recommending. And with that, I'd like to introduce Jennifer Pullen. She's our Public Information Officer to talk to you about some of the contact that she's had with our residents.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chair Marcus and members of the board for giving us this opportunity to speak on behalf of our property owners that live within our disadvantaged community. My name is Jennifer Pullen. I'm the Public Information Officer at High Desert Water District. And my role in this project is to explain to property owners what the benefits of this project mean, but also what it's going to cost them. During my outreach, I've developed many relationships with these property owners, and they've shared their stories of how this is going to financially impact them. Today, I would like to present just one of the stories that I hear.
Hi, my name is Lee. I live in Apache Mobile Home Park in Yucca Valley. I have lived here for approximately 12 years. I've been in Yucca Valley for about 30 years. Just prior to my husband's death, we bought a place here at the mobile home park so that I could have a safe and nice place to live that the cost would be low. I have just Social Security income. Makes it very difficult to get by every single month. I do understand that the sewer is very important to our area. I know that we have grown so much that septic tanks are not viable. However, if I were to be assessed a large amount of money, it would be something I just could not do. It would most likely mean that I would have to give up my home, which I certainly don't want to have to do. I'm very comfortable here. I love it here, and I just would like to be able to stay as long as I am able in my home.
So Lee's just one of the property owners that I hear on a daily basis of how this is going to financially impact them. As Lee mentioned, she lives off Social Security. That's about $889 a month. This is what Lee's going to be paying for our sewer, for our centralized wastewater reclamation. For the cost of the infrastructure, and this is based off the 1%, she's looking at $403 a year. Her private property connection will be a minimum of $111 a year. Maintenance fees, $259 a year. Her total annual cost is going to be $773. That's almost 1 month's worth of what she lives off of. As these property owners share their story. Yes.
Not being familiar with the district's rate structure, does the district vary the rate structure based on income of your ratepayers? And if not, why not, if this is such a considerable factor?
You know, currently our wastewater rate structure isn't in place. For our water rates, we do not provide that service, which I think would be a violation of Prop 218 actually, to service or to allow a different wage structure for the disadvantaged as well.
Ms. Hartridge?
Yeah, Prop 218 sets some pretty strict limits about how a public entity can set water rates, and as it stands today, that's what you've just heard is a correct representation of Prop 218's limitations. There's not a utility emergency fund like you might see a private entity have.
And if I may add, there are communities that do it. They tend to draw it from general fund or some other sources other than their rate structure, which is why it seems confusing.
So, as Lee's story, you know, I explain to these property owners, they come in and I explain their benefits and I explain their cost. And when they come in, you know, they tell me, you know, I understand we have to do this, but how are you going to help me as a property owner afford this? And I do explain to them that we continue to look for grant funding that may be available to our project. I also explained to them that we are seeking from the State Water Resources Control Board a 0% interest rate. That being said, you know, that's about $10 a month in savings. To some, that may not seem a lot, but when I explain this to the property owners, and Lee knows about this, and she was able to share her story with us, knowing that, keeping that in mind, you know, it provides a glimmer of hope that we're working towards our goal of trying to lower these costs for them. It's important that we lower these costs. You know, we also have some of the highest water rates. We're very conservative with our water. We use a tiered rate system. We're probably one of the first agencies who use the tier rate. Therefore, it's about 3 times, our water rates are about 3 times the cost of other agencies. In addition to their water rates, they also are paying, as Assembly Member Chad Mays had mentioned, in the 90s we had an overdraft, so they're also paying for the infrastructure that allows us to import state water from the State Water Project. There's 3 assessments. One of them will be paid off in 2022, but the 2 will remain.
So, you know, it kind of, to echo that response as well, I mean, it kind of shows that our community, you know, definitely has been back up against the wall before when it's come to some of these infrastructure projects. But when they're affordable, they do support them for our community, just as this one was as well. And today's dollars, that $65 or $70 million project would have been the equivalent of $118 million in today's dollars. So. However, substantially less assessment, and it's also assessed to the entire region, not just our community. So, so in closing, you know, just to talk again about the huge impact to our disadvantaged community. You know, they want to pass this, they want to build this system. They just want it at the lowest possible cost, and that's what we want to provide to them. So it's going to be an impact regardless, but every penny that we save them is a plus to them. So there's limited funding available that we've discussed. Not only is it a benefit to our local constituents, but it's also a benefit to our entire region. So it's not just benefiting Yucca Valley. All of these people that visit us, over 3 million a year, moving through our community, will benefit from it as well. It's also a state benefit when we look at the 1,000 acre feet that we'll be able to discharge and reclaim through our aquifer each year through the treated water effluent. And it also means the future of Yucca Valley. I will let the town speak to that further, but you know, it's important that, you know, that the people that are there living today have a future and that they can afford that future with us. And we feel that the way that we can do that, make sure that this assessment gets passed and move forward, is by providing them with a 0% interest rate over that first 20 years. So. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I have a question on regional benefit. I appreciated that you pointed that out. I was wondering if you've thought about, as far as fundraising, because, you know, we believe in a portfolio approach. And have you thought about ways to raise funding for basic infrastructure needs from all the folks that visit your community? We did that in my hometown.
You know, there was a sales tax measure that we had some time ago. There was some thoughts from the community. There's some portions about it that they didn't necessarily like. So that's definitely something in the future that our community can look at again as well.
Yes, I was here when they came forward with the sales tax proposal, and it failed.
Oh, here? Yeah. They came here. Right, right. That's what I meant. Here.
It worked in
which
my
is,
town.
I think is, which I think sets an important stage, is that if everything isn't just right in the community's eyes, you know, they don't support projects like this. They won't support measures, you know.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Next is Wanda Statham, the President and CEO of the Yucca Valley Chamber of Commerce. You said 1 minute, unless I'm not reading that right.
Thank you, Chair Felicia and Board. Wanda Statham, President and CEO of the Yucca Valley Chamber of Commerce. We think the High Desert Water District has done an excellent job educating our business community on the importance of this project. Our business property owners do understand the need, but again, they can't afford the high costs. The other parts of the state, some other parts of the state have recovered from the Great Recession, but our area is still struggling. We do not have indoor shopping malls, and we don't have a lot of big box stores in Yucca Valley. The bulk of our businesses are family-owned and operated. For long-term economic growth, we need as much help as you can give us. And on behalf of the Yucca Valley Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, I want to thank all of you very much for the hard work that you've already done on this project for us. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. And next we have Mayor George Huntington from Yucca Valley, followed by, I'm sorry, I'm breaking my rules about doing the following, followed by Curtis Yakimo, who's the town manager.
Madam Chair and members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. My name is George Huntington. I'm mayor of the town of Yucca Valley. As you've heard, Yucca Valley is not an affluent community. The mean household income is 30% below the state average. Assessed property values have decreased in each of the last 2 years. 20% of our population is 65 and older, and many live on fixed income. The town council is in full agreement that the wastewater project is the town's #1 priority and pledges to support it with all its resources. We strongly ask the board to consider a loan structure which best represents and serves our community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Yakimo, followed by Bob Statham, Board President, High Desert Water District.
Honorable Chair and members of the board, thank you again for the opportunity to address you. My name is Curtis Yakimo, Town Manager for the Town of Yucca Valley. You know, today is a significant day for the High Desert Water District as they're here before you for their loan application. But even more significant than that, it is a significant day for our entire community. And I think it's very important that while High Desert Water District is serving as the lead agency on this project, we stand before you as a unified community asking for your assistance in consideration today. As you've heard multiple times this morning, Yucca Valley serves as the economic hub and the social hub of the entire Morongo Basin. As such, the town provides significant support to the 29 Palms Marine Corps Combat Air Ground Center, our large retirement community, and the over 3 million visitors that we have to our national park and other recreational activities. So this morning, as you consider the program funding request, we stand before you again united, and that we are confident that through your decision today, the town will be able to meet the regional board prohibition, provide clarity to homeowners and businesses alike. And I would just like to take a quick second and address Board Member Moore's comment on other portfolio financing, if you will. The town did have a sales tax measure in 2012. It failed by 200 votes in the population of 10,000 voters. There were a number of reasons, but probably the biggest reason that it didn't pass, in our estimation looking back, is that there was uncertainty. And I think the action that the board has before them today will assist in providing clarity. Homeowners and business owners alike will know what that funding structures will look like in the future for wastewater rates, both in infrastructure and ongoing maintenance. And through that, it's very likely that we would expect that the community would rise again, and they would know through a sales tax measure now to be able to take advantage of those residents that come, that live in town, as well as visitors that come in town, to be able to assist in providing financial assistance to the community. So again, in closing, we believe that the residents and property owners are ready to move forward, and they will pass the assessment vote. What we need is your assistance in consideration of a 0% loan for the maximum term permitted under the program guidelines. We're confident that through the successful completion of this project, the town will continue to be a great place to work, play, and live. Thank you again for your consideration this morning.
Thank you. Mr. Statham, followed by Jose Angel from Region 7.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Bob Statham. I have the honor of being the president of the Board of Directors, High Desert Water District. I want to express my appreciation for the hard work our general manager and staff have done getting us to this point, in particular the work of the Colorado Regional Board, their staff, and your staff. We wouldn't be here today without all of their assistance. And I want to express my appreciation also for your consideration in this matter that is just vitally important to our small community. To summarize our position, our community understands the need for this project and are prepared to move forward. They just need some assistance with the means. We are looking for environmental justice here. It's a pretty disadvantaged community that would like to pull itself up by its bootstraps, as was mentioned before. We are going to have to pay the whole amount of the principal, $150 million, and to be asked to pay another $23 million on top of that for interest, I'm very concerned that the residents might balk at that. But if they see the possibility of a partnership with this board covering a significant portion of that interest, I think that will encourage them for a positive vote and to move forward. So in closing, I would really like to ask you to seriously consider granting this water district and this community a 0% for 20-year loan and not to exceed 1% for the final 10 years. I very much appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I actually have a question, since I've heard this from several speakers now. When engaging with your community members, have you shared with them the staff's proposal, which in essence translates into a $15 million portion that the state is taking on and waiving with respect to the proposed loan?
Yes, in short, definitely yes. We have spoken to them about all of the additional funding opportunities that we've been looking at, and that is the little glimmer of hope that they are rather expecting in some ways us to come back with. And I think were we to do that, we would likely get a positive vote.
Well, I think part of this is the messaging with your community members. Certainly, whatever action the board takes today, if it chooses to approve the staff's recommendation, you can either convey as, we went to Sacramento and we didn't get the 0%, or we went to Sacramento and reduced the loan rates from 1.6 to 1%.
It would be my understanding and my intention that whatever consideration we get from this board will be positive good news to the community, and we will present that in that fashion to the community to give us our best chance at a positive vote. We're not putting the best case scenario out there as their only and best option.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good to see you. And the speaker after you will be David Boland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Marcus, board members, good morning. My name is Jose Angel. I am the